Hello and welcome to the Breaking the Mother-Daughter Granddaughter Diet Cycle webinar. And I am Ann Poirier, and I'll be your guide on this journey. And we'll be sharing lots of information for you today. And I hope that as you listen, you might have what I call a widening of focus or a broadening of vision. Because sometimes what we see is kind of this straightforward. We have this tunnel vision on the things that we notice and the things that we see. And so one of the goals for me today is to share some different things for you to think about, maybe some ahas. I hope that you will enjoy the time with me. We'll be about 45 minutes, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. I know that time is one of the most precious commodities that we have, and I greatly appreciate you sharing some time with me today. And I hope that you enjoy this presentation. So this is very close to my heart. So I am the founder of Shaping Perspectives, and the mission that we have here is to guide and empower women to stop dieting and start living so that they can really know and understand their true value and worth in body and mind as they are today. So let's get started. You are in the right place if you're a mom, a daughter, or a granddaughter. Also, I want to say if you're an adult person who had a mom that may have dieted or idolized the thin ideal, you're in the right place. If you struggle with your relationship with food, eating, or your body, if you work around young people. So we're going to be talking about mom's influence on children, but this is also a broader, widening the vision. It's also if you work with young people being younger than you. So I consider young people to be millennials or next gen, so as well as teens and tweens and children, because we can become role models if we learn things from this place. So if you work around young people and you care about our future. So if this does not explain you, then I thank you for being here. And you can watch if you'd like, but because there's great information, but also I want to honor your time. So this is what you'll discover today. We're going to be talking about how we as moms and dads, I don't want to, leave them out, but as parents and as adults can influence our children and the children that we interact with. Why it's important to really be aware of the facts around dieting, because that, we're going to talk a lot about how this cycle starts and how it continues generation after generation, and why there needs to be a change in the way that we talk about food, weight, and body. And I also want to just share with you that I will not be selling anything at the end of this webinar. This is for information for you. I am really dedicated to sharing a different perspective around food, eating, weight, and body image. So that's what I want to do here, is just educate and share today a lot of different things and research to look at and notice. Let's start with the fact that children are like sponges. What you say and what you do is seen by them. If you think about toddlers, they learn to talk, or 1-year-olds, they learn to talk through listening. They hear sound, they hear the way that you say things, and they mimic you. So not only do they mimic our language, they also mimic what we do. And so I'm going to start today with a story, and it's called The Ham Story. And it's a great little story. If you've heard it before, bear with me. So a little girl is watching her mom bake a ham. And the mom takes the ham out of the fridge, she puts it down, and she cuts both ends off the ham. And then she puts it in the pan and she puts it in the oven. And the little girl goes, "Mommy, why do you cut the ends off the ham?" And the mom said, "Well, you know what? That's what grandma used to do. So that's what I do." And so she says, "Well, why?" And the mom says, "I don't really know. Let's call grandma." So the little girl calls grandma and says, "Grandma, why do you cut the ends off the ham when you bake it?" And grandma says, "Huh, that's a good question. I don't know. Great grandma used to always do it." And so we have great grandma alive in this story. And so let's call great grandma. So the little girl calls great grandma and says, "Great grandma, why do you cut the ends off of the ham when you bake it?" And great grandma says, "So the ham will fit in the oven." And so the oven for great grandma was much smaller. And yet, generation after generation after generation continued to cut the ends off the ham without really a reason around it. But it's just what I see, I copy and I do. So children see everything, and this is going to be our focus today. They listen and they observe. So I was saying how they hear what we say. So how do you treat yourself? How do you talk to yourself? And a lot of times we don't even hear it. We say something under our breath, they catch it. Or how do you speak about others? So it's, conversations around walking down the mall and seeing someone wearing something and, oh, she shouldn't be wearing that, or she shouldn't be eating that, or who does she think she is to wear clothes like that? She shouldn't be doing that. So they hear that kind of conversation as well. So this is kind of our, let's look at this, remember this as we move through the conversation today. I'm going to share a few stats with you. The desire to be thin for girls has its greatest growth between ages 5 and 8. I just had a client the other day say that her 5-year-old came home and asked her, "Mommy, am I fat?" 5 years old. And this is so sad to me in our culture. For boys, it's the desire to be muscular, and it starts a little bit later. I think it's about 7 to 9. But they have some body, they have, instead of it being a thin ideal, it's more of a muscular ideal, right? So it goes for both girls and boys. And then 81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. If you have a class of 20 kids in 4th grade, that means 16 of them have this underlying fear of being fat. So they're thinking about their bodies or judging themselves even in 4th grade. And then this continues on, right? So the number one wish for girls 11 to 17 is that they could be thinner. So now we've come from afraid of being fat to wishing they could be thinner. And then 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies. Another stat that I don't have here is that 97% of women have one of these "I hate my body" moments every single day. Something about their body they either hate or they talk to themselves about. So when we are unhappy in the body, what is our first thought? Our first thought is to change it or to do something about it. And what we turn to is dieting. So we're going to talk a little bit about dieting here. The dieting industry is a $66 billion a year industry. And the stats on diets working, 95% of all diets fail, which means they might be short-term success, long-term failure. 95% long-term failure. If you've ever been on the diet, the yo-yo dieting or the diet cycle, you understand this. Something might work, weight loss happens, the diet stops, weight gain happens. 66% of diets or dieters actually gain more weight than they lost. So they're actually at a higher weight at the end of a diet. So let's take a look a little bit deeper on this. What I want to do is share with you the objectives I have kind of as we move through today. And it's really to broaden awareness of our behaviors, ones that we notice or, children notice or children rebel against, right? So that's another piece that we're going to talk about. Understanding why dieting is dangerous, and then also discovering some ways to model supportive behavior so we can actually make a difference in our next generation. So who am I to take you on this journey? Who am I to guide you? Well, professionally, let me share with you a little bit about professionally who I am. I am the founder, as I said, of Shaping Perspectives. I am a lifestyle coach. About 5 years ago, I went back to school and got my eating disorder specialist. I'm an intuitive eating coach. I shifted a lot of things just in the past 5 years. I spent 30 plus years in the exercise field, and I've shifted my expertise around fitness and exercise to movement and play. Actually eliminated the word exercise pretty much from my vocabulary, and I talk about movement, just moving the body and playing. And then I also really have understood, due to my own negative self-talk, how important changing our mindset is. So I'm a certified self-talk trainer and a body image coach. So this is what I look like as a professional. But let's take a peek at what I really am, or where I really came from. And I will tell you, my first diet was at about 11 years old. And this diet came because now I can look back at it, due to a series of circumstances. So I want to share them a little bit to see if this triggers anything in anybody about, oh, no wonder I have felt this way. So when I was a girl, I was kind of a tomboy, and I wanted to play with my brother and his friends, and they were a little bit older. They had a nickname for me, and this was probably about 9 or 10. They had this nickname called, and they called me Annie Fanny Farmer, and they sang it, Annie Fanny Farmer, I can hear it. And all I heard from it, it's a harmless nickname now when I look back at it, but all I heard and what I took and what I absorbed from that nickname is Fat Fanny. That's what I heard, is that I have a that the fanny piece was what stuck in my brain. And so I must be fat. And because of that, that's where my mindset was at 9 or 10. And if you think about, someone says, I want to buy a red truck. And then all of a sudden, all you're seeing is red trucks. Your mind is there, so that's what you see. And so since my mind was there, believing I was fat, anything that gave me any evidence of that attached to it. So another thing that I remember distinctly is going to the doctor and getting weighed, being on the up part of the scale, the little spectrum, and the doctor telling my mom, you better watch what she eats. So there was a shift there. There was a strengthening of the belief that I'm fat. And then when I went to school to go school shopping, I wasn't in the normal section. I was in the husky section. So I couldn't buy the same clothes as the kids that I was hanging around with. So that was just more proof that I am not, my body isn't good enough. My mom had a little bit of dieting culture. She was looking to always lose a few pounds, but it wasn't a huge thing. But I understood this connection that our bodies mean more than I realize they do now. But that's where I was. And so my first diet started at about 11. And then at 12, I was in the hospital with anorexia nervosa, spent the next 3 years fighting that. When I recovered from the anorexia, nervosa, what happened for me for the next 30 plus years was a constant yo-yo dieting, disordered eating relationship with food and my body. So body hatred, never being good enough. I went into the fitness field, and that became kind of a driver for my eating disorder. So even though I was recovered from anorexia nervosa, the disordered eating behavior and a couple of relapses into exercise compulsion and binge eating I have a long history with this, and I understand how hard it is to move away from it. So as I said, about 5 years ago, that's when things really shifted. And I said, I'm tired. And let me share the moment that I kind of realized that I was tired. I was in the hospital lying ready to go into knee surgery. They were going to do something called an osteotomy, which is a breaking of the bone, so that you line up your knee a little bit better, so I could continue to run and exercise and pound my body. So I had decided on this surgery versus something else because I wanted to keep exercising. And so I went in, and I had right before I went in, the doctor came in and said, I just want to share with you that if I get in there and your knee's too bad, I'm not going to be able to do the surgery. We'll just clean it out. And I said, okay. And he left, and I turned to my husband and I said, they're not going to be able to do the surgery. And lo and behold, they weren't able to, because my knee was too bad, because of all the consistent pounding and because of the eating disorder behavior. So I knew in that moment that something had to give. As I was recovering, I was tired. Enough was enough. And this is where things really started to shift. I was actually going to be continuing this behavior, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so that's my story. And let's get into this a little bit more. Take a deep breath. The Fiji study. Let me share this with you. In Fiji, the culture is a celebration of bodies and food. It's where all different bodies are celebrated for no matter what size they are. And before 1995, it was free from eating disorders. So before 1995, there were no eating disorders in Fiji. Now, in 1995, there was a study done, a 3-year study, and they introduced TV. So TV was introduced into Fiji into Fiji in 1995. Between 1995 and 1998, 69% of 17-year-olds had been on diets. 45% had engaged in disordered eating, purging behavior, and different disordered eating behavior. So in 3 years in Fiji, from 0% eating disorders and eating disorder behavior to 69% of 17-year-olds going on diets, 45% eating disorders. So there is a huge effect of media, society, and our culture. So if you think about society today and culture today, I want you to think about how surrounded we are as adults, as well as our children, are surrounded by this thin ideal and the dieting culture. Remember, $66 billion a year. So no, you can't go anywhere without seeing diet ads or seeing models. It's in our face all the time. And now there's social media. So it's here 24/7. And if you go back in our culture, things have been very different. And the body ideal has changed, every decade. there were the Flappers, there was the Marilyn Monroe, there's the Twiggy, there's the J-Lo, right? And you remember the Renaissance. So the body ideal is always shifting and changing. And so we're always chasing whatever the body ideal is. We posted a great quote the other day, a little meme about chasing the thin ideal as like a cat and a laser pointer. So the laser pointer is running around the room and the cat's running around chasing it, but it's not even there and they can never catch it. And that's a great way of connecting with this is the way I feel about this same thing, right? So we're thinking about always chasing after something that might never be, we might never be able to catch. The disconnection of our own internal needs and wants, our own internal physical hunger and physical fullness, this disconnection starts really early. So I want to talk about that a little bit to kind of understand why we are in this position. So the best image I can share with you is a toddler. So we have a toddler and it's 5 o'clock and they are pulling on your shirt. Mommy, 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 I'm hungry. And mom says, I don't want you to spoil your dinner. Wait for dinner. We're going to eat dinner in an hour. And so there's a disconnect from internal hunger. Like, no, you're not hungry. You can wait. It's okay. So this disconnection starts kind of early. And then the little toddler sits down to dinner, eats until they're full, and there's still food on the plate. There's, half of their food is on the plate. And the mom says, or the dad says, finish your plate. So there's a disconnect of fullness. So all of a sudden the child eats until they're over full. And so we have this disconnect. And it happened to, you think about babies, when they're done eating, they pull away from the bottle or the nipple. If they're hungry, they usually are fed, unless you're put on, like I know I was, put on a schedule that you eat every 4 hours. So even if I cried at, say, 3 hours, the mother would do something else versus feed because it's not 4 hours yet. So there's a disconnection of hunger there. So this disconnect starts really, really early. The other thing we see is that food is used for lots of other reasons, right? Was food used as a punishment? No, you can't have dessert until you finish your broccoli. Was it used as a reward? Did you get an A on a test? If you get an A, you get an ice cream. If you got good grades, you got we took you out to dinner. That kind of piece of reward. If you ate all your dinner, you got dessert. That becomes a reward, right? Was it used as a comfort mechanism? So if you think about comfort, if you skin your knee and are crying, did you get a lollipop? This will make you feel better, right? Or if a toddler is acting up, or a child is acting up in the grocery store, the little containers of Cheerios are here, take these. Not connected to hunger. This is just something that's for comfort or for quieting down. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how this really makes a difference. If we have a disconnect and we don't understand really true hunger and fullness, and then we grow up in an environment where one or both parents value and embrace any of these things, so dieting, restriction, good and bad foods. Restriction might look like, no, you can't have this, you can have this. So it's, restricting certain foods. There are good and bad foods. You can't have this, you can't have that. If they value weight loss and being thin, then children grow up thinking that is what we value in this culture. And unfortunately, that's kind of how things are right now. And that's what we want to change, because all bodies are valuable. All bodies are worthy. Worthiness is your birthright, no matter what size you are. And weight does not dictate health. And that's an important piece of this whole thing to remember. So when you grow up in this kind of an environment, there's usually two paths that children will take. And let's talk about those. We have the chronic dieter and we have the chronic rebeller. So the chronic dieter is very much like my story, always dieting, always looking for the next diet, and then 95% failed. So that's why I'm always looking for the next diet. If you think about the influx of diets, it came about in the 60s and 70s. There was an increase in diets, lots of different diets, and it has slowly increased. So the continuum is going up. So the dieting, there's more and more and more and more and more diets and more emphasis on it. If we take that same timeline and look at the obesity rate, the obesity rate is going up as well. So think about that for a second. As diets increase, so does the obesity rate. So why are we still dieting? It just doesn't make sense. If you're interested in a little bit more information about why diets don't work, I have a great webinar called Death to the Diet. So please feel free to connect with me and I will share that with you. But this chronic dieter, these are some of just the things that go on in our body if we diet all the time. So there's decrease in leptin, increase in ghrelin, and a decrease in metabolism. Leptin and ghrelin are our hunger and fullness hormones. So when we're dieting or when we're restricting, we get signals from the body. The body talks to us very loudly. I'm hungry. If you eat, I'm not full yet. I need more food. So the body will fight dieting and restriction. So that's one side. And the other side is this chronic rebeller. Don't tell me what to eat. The chronic rebeller is thinking about the opposite of what they've been told or what they've seen or what they're being forced to do. The more that we push something on somebody, the more that they might rebel. So a story that I'll share with you is, say your daughter comes home with a friend that she, like all of a sudden, she's only talking about this friend. That's the friend that she wants to hang around, and you're not crazy about the friend. And so you tell the daughter, and say maybe she is 15, 16, I don't want you to see that person anymore. This could be a boyfriend, girlfriend thing, a girlfriend, it could be anything. I don't want you to see that person anymore. You're not allowed to see that person anymore. What is the daughter going to do? Anything she can to see that person. So this is an internal drive for personal autonomy. Don't tell me what I can and can't do, or I'll show you, right? And then sneaking food. I remember trying to sneak food and being caught, with my full name yelling from the upstairs to stop, a little candy jar that my mother could hear no matter how quietly I tried to open it. So sneaking food, or going to a friend's house if you were in a restricted environment and then eating whatever food you could because you weren't allowed to have it at home. And what happens is we as moms might do more harm than good. I'm going to share 5 mistakes that moms make. And I want to also share that I have made most of these mistakes myself with my daughters. This is to broaden the focus and open up the vision spectrum. This is not to make anyone feel bad about how they've been raising their kids. We do, as parents, the best we can with what we know. And now what we're going to be knowing or learning is other things. And so as I share these mistakes, if they sound familiar, just pause, breathe, relax, and see how maybe you can make some different changes. Or this might also bring up, yes, that happened to me. Yes, that happened to me. So it's no wonder that these are some of the feelings. And so as I go through a mistake, I'm going to talk about some ways that we can work with it and shift modeling behavior. That's what to pay attention to. So looking at the mistake, if it's something that you're doing or that you live through, look at what things sound right and fit right for you as ways to start shifting your beliefs and shifting your behaviors around food, eating, weight, and body image. Because moms are probably the most important influence on a daughter's body image. I did a lot of these mistakes myself to my daughters. And now that I know better, I have modeled differently. I've had conversations around all of this so that they can see a shift and they're able to live in a shift with a different mindset, with a different belief system. So it is possible. Let's explore 5 mistakes moms make. Moms being moms. Okay, that's kind of my title. Moms just being moms. We're doing the best we can. Treating children differently. So if there's a different, if treating children differently according to size. So if you have 2 siblings, one is in a larger body, one is in a smaller body, and mom gives them different food, or I always say, well, why does Sarah always get dessert and I don't? Why does he always get seconds and I can't? That kind of thing in a family. So what we want to try to do is learn to trust the children's inner food compass. Only the child knows when it's hungry and when it's full. And if we can begin to trust that child's inner food compass, that can be really helpful. Encourage yourself and your kids to tune into their bodies, both physically and emotionally. Have that conversation. What does it feel like to be hungry? And this is a conversation you can have with yourself, right? What do I feel like when I'm hungry? What does it feel like for you? Are you hungry, or do you need a hug? Or do you need to find something to do, right? Do you need a Band-Aid? Do you need an ice pack? Like, it can be all kinds of different things. So there's emotional wants and needs, and then there's physical wants and needs. So just tuning into those and starting to have a conversation around those. And then serve a variety of foods to your children's and for yourself. I know that I used to eat a different dinner than what I gave my children. And so I was modeling dieting behavior in front of them. So by serving a variety of foods to your children and yourself, it offers independence of choice. It also can help with the evening out of the playing field of foods, these quote unquote good or bad foods. We want to bring them all on the table and offer variety to our children. If children are treated differently, there's a sense of being punished or singled out because of the way that they look. And this can lead to either end of the spectrum, overeating and binging, or restricting and dieting. So this is why treating children the same, no matter what size their body is an important piece of this equation. Moms being moms. Here's another mistake. Embracing and living the diet mentality and accepting the thin ideal is truth. So I'm just going to raise my hand here. Yes, this was me. So let's see how we can shift the language around this. And these are facts. A child who is being restricted develops these feelings: shame, deprivation, frustration, anger, resentment, and even isolation. So if you are being restricted from food, if you're being restricted from love, if you're being restricted from touch, so there's a lot of things we can be restricted from. And especially if we're treated differently, or we're seen differently because of the size of our bodies. So if there's if we're ideally um, embracing the thin ideal in the dieting culture, that means we might be doing that to our children too. And then we're restricting food from them. And when moms encourage daughters to lose weight, think about that. The more that a mom pushes a daughter to lose weight, the more the daughter might rebel against losing weight. So it has been, so it's no wonder it's been linked to eating disorders and disordered eating, right? So this is where the conversation can change, because noticing the child's worth no matter what size they are. So what do we do, right? So let's talk about what we do here. We can educate yourself on the effects of dieting. And this is a great cycle, right? We start a diet, there's restriction and deprivation, then we're craving something, or something happens in our external environment that we get frustrated about, or angry about, or, and food can help. So we give in, and then there's guilt, and then we're angry with ourselves, and then we start another diet. So educating yourself on that, and that Death to the Diet webinar is a great one to get a little bit more information on this. Neutralizing all foods. So remember, if you grew up in a restricted environment, or have been living a life on either side of that spectrum of those two, where the teeter-totter was the chronic diet or the chronic rebeller, these are great steps to think about for yourself. Neutralizing all foods. So that, all foods, cake, broccoli, bread, eggs, right? They're all neutral. And rejecting the diet mentality and the thin ideal for good. Done. This is being all in. I'm done dieting. I will never diet again. And not just saying I'll never diet again for a couple of months and see how that goes. This is being all in, jumping all in with both feet, rejecting the diet mentality and the thin ideal. Moving forward. Moms being moms, having a negative body image, or speaking poorly or even derogatory towards your own body shape, looking in the mirror, pinching your belly, talking about feeling fat, or I can't wear certain clothes, or whatever might come up with your own body image. So let's see where we can go. And this is the biggest thing, is to begin to heal your own. If you can start to heal your own relationship with food and body, it gets modeled, and then children see it. So it's starting to adapt this philosophy that all bodies are special, they're unique, and worthy, no matter what size they are. Brené Brown talks about everybody, like your worthiness is your birthright. No matter what size body you're in, you are worthy, and you are deserving, and you are enough. And so this is a tough shift for a lot of people. How do you treat your body? I talk about this body checking because sometimes it's done unconsciously, pulling shirts down, or pulling shirts up, or crossing the arms, covering up, pinching the body. Watch for these kind of behaviors, because they sometimes are unconscious and you don't even know you're doing them. So just opening up that vision and being aware of them. Letting our critical inner voice out for others to heal. So this is to hear. So this is modeling, unfortunately, doing the best we can, unhealthy behavior. Mindset shifting can be extremely difficult and the most rewarding and influential in the way that you live your life. So developing self-compassion and self-kindness towards yourself is hard because you might be so used to beating yourself up. And I ask the question, how has beating yourself up worked for you so far? Kindness and compassion towards self, treating yourself like you would a friend who is struggling or suffering, treating yourself like your 5-year-old who is struggling or is suffering. Notice, this is just opening up that vision. Notice how you talk or act when you are with friends or family. As my children grew up, depending on where we were, the behavior around food shifted. So I was overly conscious about what they were eating depending on who we were with. So no wonder they didn't really understand what the relationship with food was. Why can't we have this here but we can over here, right? So it gets confusing and it's misinterpreted. So your own thoughts and words can be easily misinterpreted by others. So it's really thinking about how you're speaking to others and how others how they hear what you're speaking about. What do they hear? Right? It's that red truck thing again. If they're in a certain space, they may hear something else other than what you mean. And one more. Nope, I think we have two more. Moms being moms, complimenting and commenting on other people's weight. If a child comes home from college, her first year, she's done fabulous in college. She's had a stunning year. She joined clubs and she got good grades and she thrived socially, but she comes home and she's gained some weight. Where's the focus? The focus is on the weight gain, not on all the other wonderful things, because that's what culture values. So thinking about how do you comment or compliment other people's weights? You look great. Just that statement, wow, you look great if you lost weight. The immediate thought could be, what did I look like before? Was I not good enough before if I look great now? So remembering that sometimes these kind of compliments can actually be hurtful to people. Speak up. If someone's fat talking about themselves, change the conversation. You can't go anywhere today without hearing conversations around dieting and weight loss, or conversations around a connection between people when they are speaking poorly about themselves. I'm so fat, I can't wear, and then it's kind of it's like a magnetic field, and there becomes belonging around how women are talking poorly about themselves in groups. So they're actually feeding the conversation versus changing the conversation. So having knowledge about this is, can you be the one that changes the conversation? There are so many other things that we can talk about other than beating up our bodies or talking about our bodies and the size of our bodies, because we are all different. If you hear other people talking about somebody else's weight, really make a point to mention, we never know what's going on. We can't know what's going on in somebody's life. People can lose weight for lots of reasons. People can gain weight for lots of reasons. And we should never, never, never make assumptions. And then trying to keep, as best we can, fashion magazines out of the house, cleaning up some social feeds. Any teenagers that I work with, we're always talking about, let's look at your social media stuff and pull out some of the things that the second they see it, all they do is feel bad about themselves. So the bottom line, zero talk about dieting, weight, size, shape, body, yours or others. That's the bottom line. And it's time to break the chain, because as we've seen, it goes generation after generation after generation. And this is why it's time we stop this cycle, taking control of your life so that we can make a difference in the next generation. This is a picture I want to share is of a mother-daughter weekend that I did. And the connection between the moms and daughters, the conversations that happened, what was shared, shifted their relationships forever. Now, this was done over a year ago, and the relationships between these moms and daughters is still strong, and I keep in touch with them. It's a still strong relationship, and they're able to release their own body stuff with each other. And so that's really helpful to have by having the conversations. And sometimes they're tough, but having these conversations. This shifting and releasing of old thoughts and behaviors and beliefs is possible. It is possible. And so how, what I do for coaching, when we talk about coaching, is that what I'm going to share with you is kind of what are the things that are possible that you can do by developing new thoughts and new outcomes. Our thoughts produce our emotions, and our emotions drive our feelings, and our dreamings drive our outcomes, right? And our actions. So it's new thoughts first, and then shifting the conversation so that we have new possibilities. You can do this. And I want to share some of the things that you are capable of doing as you step into making some changes and shifts. Making peace with food, beginning to make peace with your body, with food, with eating once and for all. Reject the diet mentality and the thin ideal and step into yourself. Develop a more supportive language between you and your daughter, or you or your sister, or you or your mom, or you or your friends. Understand and know how you can support one another, how you can understand, validate, and really help one another versus push one another away. And then identify your own blocks and challenges. What is it that's coming up for you, and finding ways to get unstuck. It's our shift that creates the shift in others. Once we start to change, and one of my clients, once she started to shift her thoughts and behaviors around her own eating and body image, her daughter started to come a little closer, and now they have a really great relationship, because there was an opening and a releasing of some of the baggage, right, that she was holding on to. It opened her up for more intimate conversations with both her daughter and her son and her husband. Modify and change and transform your current relationship from where it is now. This is possible, right? If you think about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, we have to make some shifts and changes in order to see different results. So you can shift some of those thoughts and beliefs and behaviors. And one of the biggest things is to begin to trust yourself. Forgive and trust yourself, and to know that you're trustworthy. So this takes, if you're trying to gain trust of someone, it takes small steps. And so we take small steps to begin this trust in one another. I'm going to start to trust you, body. And then in turn, the body will start to trust you and your choices. I think it works both ways. I'll trust my body, and my body will begin to trust me. So what I'd like to do is invite you to have a conversation with me if you'd like to, so that we can kind of identify some of the destructive or sabotaging behaviors or habits or language that you might be utilizing, even unconsciously, right? In a place that's safe and non-judgmental, because I get it, I've been there. So I'm just inviting you, if you'd like to have a conversation, and you can go to Annie@shapingperspectives.com, so that we can start to break this cycle, that we can see if we can decrease this thin ideal and start to value all people in all sizes. And what does that look like? And how can that really shift the energy, the energy of our planet, if we're in a space of kindness and self-compassion and respecting one another for who we are and our own unique talents. So I want to thank you. I'm going to finish up here. I'm going to thank you for being here today. And I hope that you have gained some information. You've opened up and broadened your lens to look at some of these things differently, how you might be impacting your own health, how you might be impacting the health and well-being of your children or your parents. And what does it look like? What steps can you take today to start changing the conversation with yourself? How can you make changes in your own thoughts and your own beliefs, or educate yourself more on the effects of dieting or the thin ideal, and make some shifts for a better future for our the next generation? And I'm going to come back to my mission, guiding women to know and understand their true value, and right, their true value in body and mind. Thank you very much for spending some time with me. If you have any questions, please reach out, Annie@shapingperspectives.com. Love to have a conversation with you, and I appreciate you spending some time with me. Thanks very much. I'm going to stop the share, come in live. Thank you. And you can make a difference. It's possible. Have a great rest of your day.